Hello and welcome. So welcome to the Art Engager launch event. Lovely to see you. If you've got a copy of the book, see a few people waving it already. I've set up a nice display behind. I hope I'm not going to knock it over during the excitement. Oh, it's so nice to see. So nice to see some friendly faces. Welcome. I'm so delighted you could join me here. I'm going to point out two people to you. I have Anita helping me out. She's going to be letting people into the Zoom if they're arriving late from the waiting room. She also might be keeping an eye out just to check if people are on mute if they need to be as well. That would be fab. I've also got Lynn here today. Lynn is a wonderful friend and also a very experienced facilitator and a wonderful interviewer. She interviewed me on her podcast a while back. Lynn is the host of the Choose to Be Curious podcast, and I couldn't think of anyone else who I would prefer to interview me for this event. So Lynn, welcome. I'm so pleased you're here. I'm going to just share my screen. Whilst I'm doing that, perhaps you could pop out the chat and tell everybody where you're joining from. I hope you've come armed with questions as well. So here we go. So I've dreamed about this launch in many ways, in many formats over the years. I can't actually still believe it's here, but it is. And I'm very excited to talk about the book, talk about the process behind the book, really talk about what inspired me to write this book, some of the key ideas, and how I hope it will make a difference for educators, guides, docents, facilitators, mediators, whatever you call yourself, learning practitioners all around the world. We will have time for your questions. You know I'm a fan of questions, so please get your thinking caps on and think about what you'd like to ask me. This is a kind of ask me anything. I'm going to kick things off, and we're going to structure today's celebration following the structure of the book. Now, in the book, I talk about the 3 phases of a museum experience: the entry, the exploration, and the exit stage. You can see here this almost roller coaster in the middle of your program. You'll have this heightened emotion and excitement. We're going to follow those 3 stages today for this hour that we're together. So we want to mirror the process. Now, here's how it'll unfold. So in the entry stage, this is when you are building rapport and creating connections. It's a very important part of a museum program. And also for us, one of the key things I talk about, members of the Slow Looking Club and everyone else who's been on any of my workshops will know that I'm always talking about connection before content. It's a really important principle. It goes through all of my work. It even goes into my personal life as well. The idea being that we create a sense of connection amongst participants or people before we explore any material. We connect first to open up the space for engagement. So when we're more open, we're more engaged, we're ready to explore ideas together. So my opening question to you is, what's your favorite museum and why? Now, this is a great question. I love asking in my workshops. It gives me a steady stream of museums to visit. I'm never out of fresh ideas for new places to go to, but I'm really interested in the types of museums people choose and why they choose them. So a museum visit that's memorable, means something to you. Maybe you visited it this week or this year, or maybe it was when you were a child, but which is your favorite museum? Chances are everyone has a favorite. So let's see what people are saying in the chat. I see my friend Simone. Hi, Simone. So glad you're here. She loves Museum Voorlinden. That's in the Netherlands. She loves the space, the collection, and the exhibitions are always so well curated, and many memories now too. It's a great place to visit. The Rijksmuseum for Andrea. It means I'm on holiday and I'm seeing so many of my favorite works. Pitt Rivers Museum. Hi, Nikki. It's a treasure trove. You feel like you can visit far-flung places in the world. So a portal, perhaps, to somewhere else. Nationalmuseet in Oslo. Hi, Aya. Lovely to see you. Karen, you are a woman after my own heart. I've never met a museum I didn't like. Yeah, some great choices. Now, when I ask this question, quite often the answers that people give are to do with engagement. This is why I chose this question. There's a reason these museums stood out to you. They engaged you in some way during the visit. Maybe it was the building, maybe it was the atmosphere, maybe it was the collections, maybe it was a particular exhibition, maybe it was the cafe, can also be the cafe. But that sense of engagement is exactly what my book, The Art Engager, is all about. And it's about how to create those meaningful experiences that connect with people. So as you think about your favorite museum, just take a moment to reflect on what made that visit memorable and engaging. And I think this question is the perfect way to really set the stage for our conversation today. Now that we've shared our favorite museums, I want to connect one more time before Lynn asks me questions. I have this beautiful painting for you, and I'd like to do a short exercise with you. So in the Art Engager, I talk a lot about questioning. Questioning is one of my favorite things. Powerful questions can really create those deeper connections in museums. And I've created 10 questioning practices in the book to help you facilitate these conversations. One of them is called 10 to 1, and it's a questioning practice that's focused on observation and description. And we are going to try it out right now. And I have to remember to say as well, do stick around to the end, because I have a special link to share with you for some exclusive content as well from the book. So this painting, take a moment to look at this artwork. Get comfy in your seat, perhaps. Look at the colours. Any shapes you notice. What lines do you see? And label anything you notice in your head. Perhaps some questions are coming up. So as you're looking, I'd like you to write down, so you'll need a piece of paper, a notebook and a pen or a pencil, and write down 10 things that you can see. And don't spend too long thinking about it. It can be words or phrases, but 10 things you see or notice. So when you have your 10 words, let me know in the chat. So when you have your list of 10, I want you to read back over your list, and I want you to underline 5 words. And when you've underlined your 5 words, I want you to place a circle around 3 of those words. And finally, draw a square around 1 word. So share your words in the chat with me. Now, I always find this fascinating. This process is kind of like the opposite of brainstorming, because you're going from having a lot of words to then reducing it, redacting it to one word. And this is your one word about this painting or this object or whatever you're looking at. And what's quite interesting about this is you see where people are focusing on, where their eyes were drawn, what they were interested in, what drew them in, what engaged them about the artwork. And we have all sorts of words in the chat. Things from rosy cheeks, relaxing, concentration, yellow to gold, ruffles. Ruffles is a great word. Golden glow, luscious, plush, quiet, delicate, and blush. And what's quite interesting to do with the group as well is to really see whether there are any similarities with each other's responses, or perhaps you're all experiencing very different reactions, or perhaps there's some connections between them. And why might this be? So a little introduction there to 10 to 1, this questioning practice that you can find in the Art Engager. That concludes our entry part, Lynn, and I will hand myself over to you now.
Well, thank you. And thank you all for being here. I'm loving looking at these words and seeing the painting differently for what you've pulled out from it, which I think is exactly what Claire hopes for with these things, that we have that connection that is not only us to the object, but to our own thinking and then to one another. So it feels great to be able to do this with all of you and to do this with Claire. And, you know, as I was thinking, I've known about her working on this project for a long time, and it sort of feels like a pregnancy, and now she's given birth and her little baby is out into the world. So first, I just want to say congratulations, bravo. And I'm wondering what your dreams are for this little baby of yours. You have all your adoring aunties and uncles assembled here. What are you hoping for your little baby?
Oh, I love this analogy. We could also broaden it to bring out the, you know, the pain of the birth that you forget about. Maybe we'll come back to that.
It's not a mistaken analogy in that way.
And also as a twin mum as well, you know, but dreams for the Art Engager. So I think the first thing that's important to me is that this book gets used. It doesn't lie on people's bookshelves, although I'm sure it will look beautiful lined up on your bookshelves. But it's really important to me that this is a resource that is used time and time again. And I dream of seeing copies that are falling apart, hopefully not quickly, but are lined with pages marked, with highlighted parts, with post-it notes, with all sorts of annotations. I can't wait to see people's photographs of taking it into the galleries and using it. And then I think that bigger dream, kind of moving on from that, is that it will activate the changes that I want to see in the museum space. I want museums to stay relevant. I want museums to become more accessible. I want museums to be as engaging as possible. They're full of amazing objects, wonderful things, and not everyone can see that. Not everyone can experience that. Not everyone can connect with that. So I think my hope for it is that it inspires these inquiry-led, meaningful experiences that help people to connect with art, historical objects, collections in museums, and also with others, because I think this theme of connection is a really important part of the book as well. It's not just about connecting with the objects, it's also about connecting with others as well.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the pregnant pause, carry our analogy a little bit. You hoped to write this book at some earlier date, and you didn't do that. But I'm wondering sort of why now? And how did that pause influence the final product and the effort?
So I say at the beginning of the book, for those of you who have it or read it, I said that I wanted to write this book 10 years ago, and my husband said to wait. He's thrilled he got a mention as well. But he was right. The book I would have written 10, 11 years ago would have been very different to this one. It would have been a lot thinner as well. I think this one packs a punch. It's 414 pages. I sometimes questioned why I was so ambitious with my first book when I was in the process of finishing writing and editing it. But yeah, I think it's been a long time dream to have this book out there. I think there are lots of excellent academic books in our field, in the museum education field, but I've really wanted to write something that was practical, something that, you know, could be a true companion, a true handbook or guidebook for educators. And I think I've actually written the book that I wanted. It wasn't available. I looked for books on some of these subjects and they weren't there. And so the book that I would have written 10 years ago would have been a lot thinner, a lot smaller. But this version of it contains everything that I've explored and experimented with. Things that I've rejected have been, you know, changed. The method, the approach has changed quite a lot in that last decade as well. And the book is all the better because of it, because I waited. And I'm not the most patient person in the world. When I've got an idea, you know, when I'm curious about something, I really want to go for it. So it's been quite hard holding on to it, but I'm so glad I have done.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, you and I had talked about wanting to sort of center this discussion around the questioning practices, questioning being something that you and I, an appreciation for questioning, something you and I share. And I wanted to invite you actually to break that into its two component parts, questioning and practice, because they don't always get put together in the thoughtful way that you have. So it's not just about questions, right?
Yeah, so in the earlier versions of the book, there was a whole chapter on questioning. And in later versions, I've been using a lot of frameworks throughout the last decade. And some of these frameworks have worked incredibly well in the museum. Some have worked better than others. A lot have needed adaptations for the unique type of experiences that we have. I've had to adapt and change them. And I've used frameworks from all different areas as well. So I've used frameworks from facilitation, from coaching. I've used thinking routines from Project Zero, VTS, questioning protocol. And I never found the exact ones that I wanted. And I got to a certain point when I realized what's stopping me creating my own here, because I've used these types of frameworks to guide and support questioning for so long. And I realized I was kind of getting in my own way a little bit. I had a lot of these questioning frameworks ready to go. And I thought about it long and hard. And the idea of a practice really appealed to me, because when we're working with groups in the museum, when we're working with objects, we're really intentional about the conversations that we're creating. We don't use things on autopilot. I've read a lot of books about habits. I've read a lot of books about protocols and things. And there's a kind of automaticity to those that doesn't really fit with what educators are doing. We're flexible. We adapt to different circumstances and situations and different groups. We have to think on our feet. So the idea of a practice is something that over time you grow and develop with it. And I love the idea of developing these little structures that were flexible. You could adapt them as and when you needed, but would also support your own use of questioning. So at the end of the day, through the use of these QPs, as I call them for short, your own questioning technique will improve and it will empower you to develop better questions. So it was an intentional use of the word. And as soon as I put those two words together, there was a fit there, you know, there was a kind of an alchemy that really worked. And I really had to restrain myself from just putting 10 in the book, quite a few more. And I love the idea of having a whole library of these questioning practices that we can draw on. But as I say in the book, it's important, and a lot of people here will know that as well, to have a small repertoire, to get to know one or two first before you then go and find out others to work with and really test the limits of each framework before you go and introduce any new ones into your practice.
Yeah, lovely. Well, as you know, I have already incorporated several of your practices into my dinner parties, into my daily habits. So if those of you who are here haven't already done that, just heads up, you will. They're way too sticky. They're just going to attach themselves to your day. So we have 1 minute left, and I just have one kind of surprise question for you, because everybody really wants to know the backstory on writing a book. So I want to know, speaking of practices, whether there were practices that you found yourself developing in writing that you hadn't known of before, that took you by surprise, that carried you through. Just wondering if there's anything like that came up for you with this.
So I think I could write a whole book now about writing a book. I'm not sure whether that would be encouragement for others or may put them off the process. But yeah, the book writing process itself, that became a practice in itself. And I joined this wonderful group called the London Writers Salon, if anyone's heard of them here. And they have this writers hour every day. It's actually 3 times a day, and you could join 3 times at different time zones to get you into the habit, the practice of writing. And it was a wonderful way to start my day. So I made that a practice. And a practice for me it's more than a routine. It's more than this kind of idea of something that's quite automatic. It's almost like a ritual, and I would sit down with my cup of tea and I would have, my breakfast afterwards as my reward. And I do my writing for an hour. So that was part of the process. And that's, kind of embedded in my memories now about writing the book. But writing a book, far more than just organizing your ideas. The ideas were never a problem. I've got tons of ideas, but it's refining your thoughts. That's that hard thing. And then making everything join up together, finding the clearest way to communicate your experience, your knowledge, the ideas that you've been working on. So I think I learned a lot about patience and discipline. And I think I learned a lot about the depth of my own practice. So I realized how much the Thinking Museum approach has changed over time. And there are some people here who worked with me from the beginning as well. They've known me, right from 2012, 2013, and have seen how these ideas have kind of evolved and grown over time. And I think the process of writing a book really helped bring that clarity to how the approach has developed through reflection and lots of experimentation and lots of experiences that I've had in the museum as well.
Yeah, nice. Well, congratulations. And thank you for modeling also for us in terms of curiosity, connection, and reflection as well. So bravo.
Thank you so much for asking me those questions. That was a really lovely experience. I was quite nervous about being asked lots of questions.
She was very nervous, but she did great, right?
Also about being in the spotlight. It was almost like another analogy, your wedding day, where you're like, I don't want everyone to be looking at me. Let's focus on the book instead. But no, it's really nice to talk about some of these things and talk about the process behind it as well, because it has been a journey. Hate to use the J word, but it has been as such. We have another activity for you now as part of the exploration stage. So this is the main part of the program. I'm going to go back to my slides. So we're moving on from the lovely Fragonard painting in 10 to 1. We've done the Q&A. And so this is a quick go through some of the beautiful illustrations that are in the book. So I worked with an amazing designer called Shidem Govan, and she brought all of my ideas to life with these amazing and beautiful illustrations. These are colored for presentations. In the book, they're black and white. They're beautiful. She knows that I love mid-century design and designed this wonderful mobile, which I love the idea of a mobile to represent all the questioning practices, that kind of fluidity, the movement, really kind of echoing all the ideas behind these practices. And this is the discussion cycle as well. Something I talk about a lot in the book is how to create a discussion that's well-rounded, based on observation, description, interpretation, conclusion, and then all of the questioning practices. So I'm going to go through these quite quickly, but you'll see these beautiful designs, all of the different QPs in the book. Okay. Now, I thought I would spotlight the connections triangle because this is such a core part of the book. It's such a core part of the Thinking Museum approach as well. The idea of connection before content, but also the idea of connecting to people, to objects, to museums as well. So the connections triangle is another questioning practice, one of the 10 in the book. And really, connections are at the heart of museum experiences. And this questioning practice encourages 3 types of connection making. So connecting objects to each other, object to object, object to self, and object to world. So we're going to do a very short activity where we're going to make some connections with objects. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to choose an object. So this can be something that's around the area you're in now. It can be something on your person. It can be something in your bag or in your desk. But I want you to choose something. Don't spend too long thinking about it. I'm going to give you a minute to choose something. And then when time is up, everybody is going to hold up their object. So let me just stop sharing my screen. It can be anything, a pen, a coin, a watch, a credit card. So choose something. I'll give you 30 more seconds. Okay, time is up. Let's see if this works. So I think you can take a group photo now on Zoom. So if everybody holds up their object, let's see if we can take a photograph. I'm going to hold up my water bottle. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for that. The next stage after we have chosen our object is to look at it. So place it down in front of you. And take a little bit of time to have a good look at your object. So look at your objects. So really see if you can scan the entire thing. And once you've had a good look, now let's pick up your object and really feel your object. Feel all the textures. Turn it upside down if you can. Move it around. Look at it from different angles. So spend about 10 to 20 seconds just looking at and touching your objects. Think of words to describe it in your head. So once you have felt your object, now think about what questions come to mind. So what are you wondering about your object? Maybe think of 3 questions you're curious about. And once you've got some questions, let me know in the chat. And then the last stage is to connect. So we've looked, we've inquired, and now we're going to discuss and connect. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pop you very briefly into breakout rooms, and I would like you to share your objects with each other, discuss what you noticed, what you saw with each other. Everybody in the room, I think you're mainly in groups of 3. There's a few of you in groups of 2. Discuss your objects, and then I want you to find connections between your objects. Connect your objects together. So your goal will be to find connections between the 2 or the 3 objects in your room. So the more you share about it, what you've noticed, what you've seen, the more you discuss with each other, the more you'll have those connections. They come up through the conversation. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. And when we come back, we will have time for some Q&A, and I will also share the link to the downloads that you can have as well. But those of you who can't be in breakout rooms, you can just stay in the main room. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to open the rooms now. So would anyone like to raise their hand and share any of the connections that came up for them? Or wave at me. Oh, I can see Lindsay's waving. You're very small there, Lindsay, and you're also named Paul.
Yes,
so
thank you.
Yes, I can hear
I'm
you.
in Paul's office, but it's Lindsay, and I connected serendipitously with one of my colleagues in the museum who happens to be at a different location, plus Brenda. 2 of them had ceramics, and of course the texture, the smoothness of the beautiful ceramic was a connection. I had a leather binder or case for a to-do list, and the leather is the kind that's soft and hand-stitched or feels like it. And so we all had very tactile experiences and personal connections with trips and children giving gifts and my husband giving me my gift.
Love it. I'm amazed you managed to find so many connections as well in such a short period of time. Did everyone else have similar experiences? Maybe they found connections, or did anyone struggle to find connections with their objects?
Claire, can I speak?
Maria, hi.
Yes, hello, how are you? Yeah,
I'm very well.
Yes, I was paired with Pekka from Peru, so it was nice, but because the first thing that we met is that we had the same language, Spanish, so we could connect through that. And I had the bottle of water and she had a book, and we connected both things in the sense that we need books and we need water to live. Yeah.
I love it. I love that you connected over language as well. And thank you to the breakout room magic for putting you 2 together so you could speak in Spanish. Anyone else got any connections to share? Thank you, Maria. Brenda.
So I was with the group with Lindsay and Brigitte, and I just wanted to say that at first we thought, oh, this is going to be hard. You know, we held up our objects and they were so different. So it was interesting, as you said, the J word, journey, that in 5 minutes, what we accomplished. So I just wanted to add that to what Lindsay had said, that initially it was like, oh, this is going to be tough. And then the directions that you gave us were terrific. Describe it in as much detail as possible. And that's when we started to say, oh, yeah, we're all making connections now. So,
yeah. And
well
you've hit
done.
the nail on the head there, Brenda, as well. This is where the connections come from. They come from the conversation, the observation, the description, and then you're making those connections with people. And so often I hear people say, oh, there's no way I can connect. The other day I did this in person in a workshop, and we had, what did we have? 2 shoes and a ring, because there were one person took their shoe off, the next person took their shoe off, and the ring. They still managed to find connections. They were very skeptical at the beginning, but as you say, it comes from the conversation as well. And if you think about using this questioning practice, so there are 3 ways that you can connect as well. So you can connect object to object. And if you're in the gallery, you might want to think about how you structure that. Maybe it's a free choice. You've got your group. I would like you all to find a connecting artwork and then tell us why this artwork connects, or a connecting object. Or you choose the object and say, I'd like you all to find connections between this object and this object, and encourage the conversations to take place, because that's where the connections will come from. The other types of connection, personal connection. Again, you might want to set up the space for that, how people share their personal connections to paintings, to objects, to artworks and things. And also those larger connections, those kind of world connections. Why does this matter? Why is this important? How does this connect to world events? All of those sorts of bigger questions as well. So a super useful questioning practice, and a sort of sneak peek of what you might be able to do with it, just with objects that you might have around you. I see that we're almost coming up to the hour, Lynn. Have we had any questions in the chat yet?
I have not seen a lot of questions in the chat, but I want to offer one of my own while people are thinking about this, if you will. And that is, you have a lovely passage in the book about silence, which feels like kind of an appropriate thing right now, and to think of silence as thinking time. And I wanted to ask you to just expand on that a little bit, and also say to people, silence, okay, thinking time, still time for questions in the chat. But expand on that, if you will, because I thought this was a lovely passage.
Yeah, this came out of something I wrote, I think it was 2014, maybe 2015, but it was about the tumbleweed effect. So it's what happens when you ask a question and you get nothing. So you get just the sound of tumbleweed rustling past, or crickets, or whatever the expression is. And as an educator, as a facilitator of experiences, that's quite a scary moment. It feels as though your question has fallen flat, but it's always good to think about that silence in a number of ways. It doesn't have to be a negative silence. It can be, as you say, this thinking time, especially if you're asking these wonderful, generative, open-ended questions, because these are the types of questions you can't answer quickly anyway. There's no fast answers to these types of questions. So thinking time, I think, is a really nice way of framing it. You can also call it waiting time, but the thinking idea just really makes you think that there's a process going on. There's a cognitive process that's happening, and it takes the pressure off. That pressure of you feeling this is dead air. It's not dead air. People are kind of thinking, do I have something to say here? Is there something that I can add to this conversation? So silence for us, and I did a whole podcast about silence as well. I did two, in fact, so I couldn't squeeze it into one. So it's something that I talk about quite a lot, not to be afraid of pauses, not to be afraid of silence, and to think of it in this kind of positive way as well.
I love that there was so much to say about silence that it took 2 podcasts. That's delightful. So there is a question that's come in on the chat from Barbara about what is your one tried and true fallback questioning practice. Can you pick one?
Yeah, it would be the universal. So the universal is the first one in the book. It's the one the current podcast episode is about, because when I did my master's research, I was doing my thesis for my master's 12 years ago, whenever that was, I investigated a lot of questioning frameworks, because I wanted to find out what was the secret sauce, what was the magic behind these frameworks, what did they need to have in the museum to make a meaningful, well-rounded object or art discussion. So I studied lots of them, and I took all of that research and put it into the universal. So the universal has 4 steps, and they're very simple: observation, wondering, so inquiry, what questions do you have? The next stage is interpretation, which gives you space to share stories if you want to, but it can also be your own personal interpretation. And the last stage is reflection. So what insights has this brought you? The discussion about the artwork, or being in a group together. So those 4 kind of stages mean that it's applicable to so many different types of things. So if I had to just take one, that's the one I would put in my suitcase, because I can use it in any museum. I can use it out and about in nature. I can use it with buildings, the built environment. I can use it with all types of objects because it's a classic. It's a kind of classic design, and it fits that discussion cycle I was talking about as well.
Yeah. So do we have time for one more?
Sure.
Okay. So this one is kind of fun. How do you find cultural differences affect your art engager practice or practices?
Yeah, so it affects all the workshops I do because I now do more and more workshops around the world. I think there's cultural differences that will happen on a national level, on a local level, also on an organizational level. When I go into different types of museums and how they're set up and how their educators are set up, whether this is a volunteer team or whether it's a paid team. So there's all these sorts of these differences. But I think the core of the work is the same throughout. So when you're talking about these foundations, and the book is split into two halves. There's the part on the foundations, this is the why behind the approach. This is why we do it. These are the important things to grasp before you do the how. And the foundations, that feeling of shared inquiry being super, super important. So whatever you might need to do to create that shared inquiry in this specific environment, that might be different than it was yesterday in another environment, but really taking note of that. And also encouraging that observation and description. What do I do to make that happen here? So really going back to your foundations, I think makes it feel that there's a process and there's foundations behind the approach that you can count on wherever you are, wherever you use it as well.
Lovely, lovely. So I'm going to remind you to mention the link.
Oh, yes. Yeah, very good, because I had forgotten. Let me grab that link for you. So I've put together a list of the questioning practices in a PDF that you can download. So I'm going to put it in the chat now. And it gives you an overview of 10 to 1. 3-2-1 reflection. We didn't have time for that, but it's a really good questioning practice to use at the end of a program or the end of a discussion. And the other one is the connections triangle as well. And then you've also got the artwork for the whole of the questioning practices there as well. So it gives you all the stages and the steps. Hopefully the PDF worked. I get a thumbs up. Excellent. And that leaves me to say, so if you haven't got your copy already, I would love to see you with your own copy of the Art Engager. There's a scan thing here, which takes you straight to this website, which is theartengager.com. It has its own little website, this book. So go and visit that website. If you'd want to order copies for your team, then please get in touch because I can arrange that for you. If you'd like to arrange a book club with your team members or other members, then get in touch because I can do a Q&A with you and we can talk about the book. There's all sorts of ways we can make some community and connections out of this. And if you have read the book, if you could give it a quick rating. It takes 10 seconds to go onto Goodreads or go onto Amazon or wherever you want to buy your books or wherever you want to do your ratings or review, and give me a rating. I have one on Amazon. I'm very proud of it. And I have a lovely review. Thank you, Jeroen. I think you're still here on Goodreads as well. So I'd love some more reviews because it really does help to spread the word and get the word out. Thank you for coming along today. I've really enjoyed celebrating this book. We're going to try and do a photograph again. So let me stop sharing my screen. If you have one thing to take away from today, what would be your one thing that you're going to take away? Please share in the chat. Okay. If you have a copy, you can hold it up. If not, please wave or share your object. I think it would be lovely to have us all doing something. I'm so pleased you could join me here. It's been lovely to celebrate the launch of the Art Engager. I wish we could all do it in person sometime. Maybe we should all get together somewhere and do it. But thank you so much for coming. It means the world to have you all here. It's been lovely to see you. Brilliant. Thank you so much for this. Stay in touch. But thank you to Lynn for the fabulous interviewing today. Thank you to Anita for monitoring the chat and letting people in and out. I saw that was quite a busy job for you. And thank you to all of you for coming. It's been lovely to see you all. So thank you so much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye all. Thank you.
Bye.